February 17th, 2015 meeting of the Anne Arundel County Council is now in session. Please stand for the invocation. Remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Trumbauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In District 6, we are blessed with many fine institutes of worship, and today we're joined by Rabbi Pohl from Beth Shalom Synagogue, and he will give our invocation tonight.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. And thank you to everybody for coming out despite the weather. Just for you to know, I come from Buffalo, so this would not stop me. First, some verses from the book of Isaiah, and then a very brief prayer. From Isaiah, chapter 58. Thus says the Lord, this is what I desire, to unlock the fetters of wickedness and untie the cords of lawlessness, to let the oppressed go free, to break off every yoke. Share your bread with the hungry, and take the wretched poor into your home. When you see the naked, give clothing, and do not ignore your own kin. If you banish the yoke from your midst, the menacing hand, the evil speech, if you offer compassion to the hungry and satisfy the famished creature, then your light shall shine in darkness. O Lord, guardian of life and liberty, may our nation and our county, our state, always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders tonight with wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our county be sound in body and spirit. And let us all say, amen. Thank you.
Mr. Pruski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the Pledge of Allegiance this evening, we have Troop 769 from Nichols, Bethel, and Odenton. I just want to recognize committee member Mr. McConneville, and we'd actually ask the boys to come forward and prepare us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Scout sign. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your assistance. And thank you, Rabbi Pohl, for your prayer this evening. Madam Secretary, please read the ethics statement.
The Ethics Commission has asked that I advise you that under certain circumstances, members of the public may qualify as lobbyists when they testify before the County Council. If so, the law requires that certain information be filed with the Ethics Commission. The Chairman of the Ethics Commission has asked that those present review the Ethics Commission information in the foyer of these chambers. If there are any questions about lobbying requirements, speakers should contact the Ethics Commission in the Heritage Office Complex on Riva Road.
Thank you. Mr. Grasso.
I'm going to withdraw Bill 615.
Thank you. This time, is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the Council briefly on any subject not on the printed agenda? We ask that you limit your remarks to 2 minutes, and please state your name and address for the record. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Council. I'm going to divert from the Groundhog Day review of past events and turn my attention to ask you to think about county and government policy related to issues related to the potential for terrorist activities. I'd like to ask you to think about, could you live without electricity for a year or maybe 2? And if not, you know, what are some things we need to do in order to protect ourselves from these potential attacks? Certainly you've heard within the, with all the discussion, with all of the activities in the Middle East, Africa, Denmark, you're aware that there are all kinds of things falling apart, and that you're aware that there are in the vicinity of 50, no longer 2 terrorist organizations, but 50, if not more. And one of the things that they can do that's pretty simple is I had mentioned before in prior testimony about the Straits of Hormuz and the Bab el-Mandab, which are the 2 points of exit of petroleum from the Middle East. And all you have to do is sink a few ships and you can block that. And with the fall of Yemen, this is a really serious problem because Yemen borders Bab el-Mandab. But locally, it is possible to destroy transformers. And they can be, you can shut down certain selected ones that will take a year to replace. And so one thing that you can do as a matter of public policy is to consider encouraging people to create smaller solar units within their properties. Not big deals, but smaller deals. And one other, I'm finishing. I'd like to ask you to assess what are the services within the county that must be provided for during a year or two program, shortage of electricity, such as hospitals, police, fire, and so on.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
So, you can use the parking lots, to set up solar systems, solar panel grid supplements.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing no movement in the audience. Madam Secretary, please read the title of the bills to be introduced this evening.
Bill 1215, an ordinance concerning planning and zoning, general development plan for Anne Arundel County Transportation Plan. Bill 1315, an ordinance concerning retiree health benefits trust. Bill 1415, an ordinance concerning zoning, state licensed medical clinics.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read the title of the resolutions to be introduced this evening.
Resolution 1015, resolution authorizing the filing of an application with the Maryland Transit Administration of the Maryland Department of Transportation for a grant. Resolution 1115, resolution approving appointments of Severn River Commission members.
Thank you. May I have a motion to suspend the rules to hear and/or vote on resolution number 915 and bill numbers 915, 8714, 215, 315, 415, 715, and 815 out of order?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Trumbauer?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Grasso?
Aye.
Mr. Fink?
Aye.
Mr. Pruski?
Aye.
Mr. Perutka? Mr. Walker?
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Motion to suspend the rules to hear and/or vote out of order. Resolution 915, Bill 915, 8714, 215, 315, 415, 715, and 815 is passed.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Resolution 915.
Resolution confirming the appointment of 4 public members of the Personnel Board of Anne Arundel County.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Marzick.
Good evening, Chairman Walker, members of the council, Bernie Marzick from the County Executive's Office. This resolution adds Margaret Evans, Alan Firth, Michael Malone, and John Mason to the county's Personnel Board. Their terms will expire on November 30th, 2018. Arlene Berlin, who is the Administrator of Boards and Commissions for the County Executive, is here to answer any questions you may have as well.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions, gentlemen? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Marzick. Is there anyone who wishes, we're going to open a public hearing on Resolution 915. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on 915? Seeing no movement in the audience, the public hearing on Resolution 915 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Resolution 915.
Resolution confirming the appointment of 4 public members of the Personnel Board of Anne Arundel County.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution 915.
Mr. Trumbauer?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Grasso?
Aye.
Mr. Fink?
Aye.
Mr. Pruski?
Aye.
Mr. Perutka?
Aye.
Mr. Walker?
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Resolution 915 is passed.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill 915.
An emergency ordinance concerning floodplain management, erosion and sediment control, and stormwater management,
Thank you.
floodplain management.
Mr. Chairman, member of the council, Bernie Marzick from the County Executive's Office. Bill 915 revises the existing floodplain ordinance to incorporate mandatory new language and requirements adopted by FEMA. As a part of its recent revisions, this bill must become law in order for the citizens of the county to continue to participate in the National Flood Insurance Plan. I've been trying all day to think of a joke related to flooding, but I will decline. We have staff from Office of Inspection and Permits, as well as Greg Swain from Law Office here to answer any questions the council may have.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Trumbauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Marzick, we had a discussion about this at the work session, but just for the benefit of folks, can you describe, I think there was a notification process that went out to property owners that were potentially affected by the new FEMA maps. Is that right? And could you describe that just so we know that everybody was notified?
I'll let Jay.
Sure.
In September of last year, the county had a public information meeting sponsored by FEMA as well as MDE in the county, and the county sent out letters of notifications to all the property owners that were impacted by the changes in the new maps.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Mr. Trumbauer, I attended that, and it was actually very well attended. It's a good group of folks that turned out. So, any additional questions for the panel? Seeing none, thank you all very much. Appreciate it. This time we'll open up the public hearing on Bill 915. Is there anyone wishing to speak on Bill 915? Please come forward at this time. I don't believe I have anyone signed up for this. Seeing no movement in the audience, the public hearing on Bill 915 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill 915.
An emergency ordinance concerning floodplain management, erosion and sediment control, and stormwater management, floodplain management.
Thank you. Is there any discussion amongst the council? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on on Bill 915.
Mr. Trumbauer.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Grasso.
Aye.
Mr. Fink.
Aye.
Mr. Pruski.
Aye.
Mr. Perutka.
Aye.
Mr. Walker.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Bill 915 is passed.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill 8714.
An ordinance concerning Sylvan Shores Special Community Benefit District.
Thank you. Mr. Marzick, any additional comments? Okay. This is a special community benefit district that is in my district that I represent. There were a number of issues that Ms. Sutherland had raised throughout the process of having this bill in front of us. Many of those issues, in my mind, are resolved. Ms. Sutherland, do you have anything to add other than your one, I think maybe one concern?
There were concerns we had raised in our original letter, some of which have been resolved and some of which have not, which just become policy decisions for the county council. It's still not clear to me the total number of properties, although Lori Blair was able to resolve some of that today, but no matter what, they do have a majority of even the maximum possible amount. So there is a majority of the property owners in favor of establishing the district. The other issues we took, other concerns we had, were that the bylaws did not allow for the membership of all property owners. That has been resolved, but the bylaws do still allow for a two-thirds majority of the stockholders to revoke the stock of another member. So someone, in fact, could not have membership, and the county code requires the corporation to allow for the membership of all. So it allows for the membership of all, but it also allows them to revoke that membership.
The revoking of membership is their own internal document, correct?
It is in their bylaws, and
The SCBD law would overrule that, essentially.
the SCBD law says that the corporation has to allow for the membership. In order to be a member, you have to buy a share of stock.
Right.
And in this case, their bylaws allow them to revoke that share of stock for a violation of the bylaws or any rule or regulation adopted by the Board of Directors for the management and conduct of the affairs of the corporation, or for conduct or activity deemed by the Board to be contrary to the best interests of the corporation or the community at large, or contrary to the objectives and purposes for which the corporation was organized.
Right.
Now, Lori Blair has advised that she doesn't think this provision is problematic, as the grounds for removal are limited to acts harmful to the community and not just at the whim of the membership. But you, as the council, may wish to consider whether you want to allow them to be able to revoke membership.
And is that your only concern at this point?
Then the other issue that I had raised in my original letter was that the purposes included using SCBD money for property owned by or to be owned by the Sylvan Shores Company. Lori Blair said it can only be used for property owned by, so you've got this superfluous language in there.
Right. We have the president of the Sylvan Shores Community Association here. Would you mind coming forward just for a minute, ma'am? Just for the record, this is my district, but I feel comfortable moving forward with this, but I just want to, if you don't mind, ma'am, if the issue that she raised with regards to the revoking of ownership stock, is that something that you all are willing to resolve as a board?
Certainly.
Okay.
We would have been willing to amend the bylaws had we known
I know you're the new president.
Time frame. No, in an appropriate time frame, because we did have a special stockholders meeting and amend our bylaw that we knew needed to be amended. And that was with an overwhelming majority of our stockholders attending because the community wants the special community benefit district. So whatever we would need to do, the vast majority of our residents want this, and we'll do it.
And I would I feel comfortable moving forward this personally tonight, but I would like to just ask that you go back to the membership and take her concern to them and see about changing that permanently going forward.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions from the council? Yes. I'm sorry. Would you please put your name and address on the record?
Linda Barker, 18 Dogwood Road, Riva, Maryland.
Mr. Kruger?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just was curious as what, I just want to make sure I understand. Is this being done, is an affirmative vote for this tonight making this conditional, this action on the part of, it's just?
No, it's not.
Okay. And again, so that I understand, the concern that's raised is that, or the practical effect is that, I guess, a small number of homeowners could become angry at or mad at or have an argument with another group of homeowners and by a vote disenfranchise them from the homeowners association, and they would then be left in a situation where they would be paying dues, taxes, but not be members, not have a say anymore. Is that fundamentally the problem?
Yeah, Lori Blair, Supervising County
Hi, Lori.
Attorney. Hi. Ms. Sutherland did give my position, which is that I don't think this is problematic because this is not an unusual provision in a homeowners association agreement, that if someone repeatedly breaches the rules or acts inappropriately, that they can be removed from the association, whether it be a stockholder type association, which this is. You buy a share of stock, I think, for $10 if you're a property owner. Is it $10? Something like that. So that's not an unusual provision, and what the law provides is you have to be given the opportunity for membership. So if you abuse that opportunity, then you can be removed. You are given the opportunity, but you're given the opportunity so long as you, and it's the same thing about buying the share. You are giving the opportunity to buy a share. Property owners may choose not to buy the share and therefore not be a member. So I think it's an analogous situation. And that, like I say, that's not an unusual provision either in a homeowners association document. It's not unusual to have to pay something to be a member, and it's not unusual to be removed for bad conduct.
I appreciate that. Again, my worry is that what's called something harmful to the association might be in the mind of the beholder. You know what I'm saying? That sounds like pretty clear language to me, that somebody would have to be doing something that was obviously against the interest of the association. But I just wonder whether it just could get to the Hatfields and McCoy's problem there.
I think there's always that possibility, but then that's a private corporate governance matter that the county really would not get involved in that situation.
Well, my instinct is to keep the county uninvolved from things it doesn't need to be involved in. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Mr. Walker?
Ms. Sutherland.
I guess I just want to say that I haven't been the auditor forever, although sometimes it seems that way. Since I have been reviewing these, I am not aware of any district that you have formed that has a similar provision. I'm not saying they're not out there, but we look every time we check a new district being formed to make sure it allows for the membership. So this is the first time I have ever seen this. And while it may be common for a homeowners association to do that, and it's a private corporate governance matter, once you start assessing taxes on somebody's property bill, to me it is no longer a private corporate governance matter because you're assessing someone's taxes, a tax on their property, and you can take their property away for that if they don't pay it. And so I'll just say, I'm not saying it's not out there. Maybe homeowners associations do that, but I am not aware of any other one before the county council in the time I've been the auditor that has a similar provision.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Any additional questions from the council? Okay, seeing none. Thank you all very much. At this time, Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill 8714.
An ordinance concerning Sylvan Shores Special Community Benefit District.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Bill number 8714.
No, this is just vote only. Mr. Trumbauer?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Grasso?
Aye.
Mr. Fink?
Aye.
Mr. Pruski?
Aye.
Mr. Perutka?
Aye.
Mr. Walker?
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Bill 8714 is passed.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill 215 as amended.
An ordinance concerning stormwater management, watershed protection, and restoration program.
Thank you. Mr. Pruski?
I just wanted to thank everybody. We know we had some amendments to this bill. Certainly want to clear up anything that was ambiguous, and I'd like to thank fellow Councilman Pete Smith and Mr. Walker for supporting it. Just to kind of get back, this is to provide some relief to folks who maybe have a different zoning designation, and I'll just leave it at that. We've worked it out, so thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Pruski. I appreciate that. I guess Mr. Marzik, do you have any additional comments?
No, we continue to support the bill.
Thank you. At this time, I have no one signed up for this bill, for Bill 215, but if anyone wishes to speak on this bill, please come forward at this time. Seeing no movement in the audience, the public hearing on 215 as amended is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill 215 as amended.
An ordinance concerning stormwater management, watershed protection, and restoration program.
Thank you. Any discussion amongst the council? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Bill 215 as amended.
Mr. Trumbauer?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Grasso?
Aye.
Mr. Fink?
Aye.
Mr. Pruski?
Aye.
Mr. Perutka?
Aye.
Mr. Walker?
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Bill 215 as amended is passed.
Congratulations, Mr. Pruski, on your first piece of legislation being passed unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. We're looking forward to the county executive signing it.
Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill 315.
An emergency ordinance concerning capital budget and program, Cypress Creek retrofit fund transfer.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, Bernie Marzik from the County Executive's Office. We have staff from Public Works, staff from the Finance Office, and staff from the Budget Office and the Office of Law for Bill 315. This bill transfers $45,000 from the Whitehall Creek Dredging Capital Project to the Cypress Creek Retrofit Capital Project. We'll be happy to answer any questions the council has.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? No, we have this during the work sessions. I don't anticipate anything. Okay, that's pretty easy. Thank you very much. This time we'll open the public hearing on Bill 315. If anyone wishes to come down and speak on 315, please come forward now. Seeing no movement in the audience, the public hearing on Bill 315 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill 315.
An emergency ordinance concerning capital budget and program, Cypress Creek retrofit fund transfer.
Thank you. Any additional discussion amongst the council?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Perutka.
This was discussed at the work session that this was entered as an emergency bill. I know we have the alternative to remove emergency from it, to amend that out. I know and we had some discussion about what emergencies are and what they're not. I'm hopeful that we will, going forward, abide by the plain meaning of the word emergency. That if things are truly emergencies, that we'll deal with them that way. But if they're not, we won't just deal with them in a manner that's just administratively expedient. So with that, I'm confident that that's our understanding. So with that understanding, I appreciate the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Bill 315.
Mr. Trumbauer?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Grasso?
Aye.
Mr. Fink?
Aye.
Mr. Pruski?
Aye.
Mr. Perutka?
Aye.
Mr. Walker?
Aye.
6 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative. Bill 315 is passed.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 415.
An emergency ordinance concerning capital budget and program, Studley Convenience Center upgrade fund transfer.
Thank you. Mr. Barczyk?
Mr. Chairman, members of council, Bernie Marzik from the County Executive's Office. Bill 415 transfers $60,000 from the Cell 9 Disposal Area Capital Project to the Sudley Convenience Center Upgrade Capital Project. We have staff from Public Works, Office of Budget, and Finance here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Seeing none, thank you all very much. At this time, we'll open the public hearing on Bill 415. If anyone wishes to speak on 415, please come forward at this time. Seeing no movement, the public hearing on Bill 415 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill 415.
An emergency ordinance concerning capital budget and program, Studley Convenience Center upgrade fund transfer.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Bill 415.
Mr. Trumbauer?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Grasso?
Aye.
Mr. Fink?
Aye.
Mr. Pruski?
Aye.
Mr. Perutka?
Aye.
Mr. Walker?
Aye.
6 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative. Bill 415 is passed.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill 715.
An ordinance concerning zoning, nonconforming uses, limitations, 20-year registered use.
Thank you. Mr. Grasso?
No, Mr. Walker. We talked about this earlier, Council, and the pretty much as I guess said what has to really be said. This bill is to protect businesses that have been operating for 20 years, and then lo and behold, our dear county comes along and says, now you're going to shut your doors down after you've been successfully operating for 20 years. I wanted the bill also to be able to reflect the right of a mother or a father to be able to pass a business down to their child. And the terms that will be brought up is some of the words you might hear is illegal. It's only illegal because the business that, like a workshop, is not one of the special exceptions on the list. But these are people that have successfully operated a business for 20 years, and they just want to pass their rights down to their child. So we have a couple choices tonight, folks. Gentlemen, we've got an amendment in that the administration sent down asking to remove the right of a parent to convey a business to their child. And if you choose to vote for that amendment, you take the right away from a parent to convey a business to a child. Then, of course, that'll leave us to the next point of, is do you think a person has the right to continue operating their business after being there for 20 years and the county stumbles across them on 20 years in one day? And let your conscience be your guide at this point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Tom? Mr. Marzik?
Bernie Marzik from the County Executive's Office. As we discussed at the work session, the County Executive supports this bill with the amendment that Mr. Grasso referenced to strike unless the transfer of ownership to a child of the owner who continues to operate the use without secession. We've offered that amendment, and we would support this bill with that amendment adopted.
Thank you. Any questions from the council?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Trumbauer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Marzik, or I'm sorry, Mr. Tom, probably. So let's presume for a second that this bill passes. How would a business that meets this threshold, it's been in operation for 20 years, that 20 years goes by, how is that business then treated? Is it its own particular class, or is there just an asterisk in the file? I mean, how do you apply this to the businesses in question?
Thank you, Mr. Trumbauer. For the record, I'm Larry Tom, Planning and Zoning Officer. I think what you just described is exactly how we would treat it.
That's scary.
It would be its own class of use.
Okay. So would that require a further amendment to the code or anything?
No, I think this bill would do that.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Furthermore, we wouldn't know about these businesses unless there was a complaint.
Sure.
And then we would have to investigate that, find out if they met the criteria of this class of use, and then if it did, then it would continue to be operating.
Because my concern about this, and I understand, I mean, the sponsor put something similar in last time, and this is a little bit different. It's kind of a compromise, which is good. I'm just trying to make sure we don't get into a gray area situation where there's not clarity when and if this comes into play. So if you're satisfied that this is spelled out in the legislation, then that's fine.
I think we can enforce it, yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Smith?
Mr. Tom, do you know how many off the top of your head businesses that you're aware of that this affects? Just, I don't know if you had a...
No, Mr. Smith, we haven't done the research on that.
At least 3.
Okay. At least 3. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Where are those 3 located? Just out of curiosity.
One is Lori Rhodes, for the record, zoning administrator for the Office of Planning and Zoning. One would be on Laurel Fort Meade Road. It is a full-service automobile facility that is in a C3 zone, not allowed to do full service, so this gentleman would be eligible. Mr. Grasso's constituent, Mr. Wilbur, who has some property in Millersville. And I believe there's one other property outside of Annapolis that would be eligible if this bill would pass.
Mr. Grasso's constituent, that's in a residentially zoned?
That's in a residentially zoned property, RLD. He has a 3-unit multifamily dwelling as well as a well drilling business, I believe, which is not permitted.
Annapolis, do you know what the zoning of that district is?
That property is zoned C2, and they have a business that's in C4. That would be allowed in C4.
To your knowledge, is there anything that exists like this anywhere in the state?
I've conducted research. I actually went beyond Maryland, and I could not find any legislation similar to this.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Fink.
Why is it okay for this business to continue to operate? They've been in business for 20 years, it's illegal, but you guys are okay for them to continue to operate. Why is that okay?
It's a good question. I think when you look at a business like this, the county executive has said that if they're in a unique situation where they've been operating and obviously haven't had an issue for 20 years, that there's probably a reason to allow them to continue to operate that business.
But if they leave it to their son, it's an issue. If their son's been working there the whole time and that's the only trade that son knows, that's an issue.
The issue is that from a planning and zoning perspective, according to Mr. Tom, and I'll let him speak for himself, that would defeat the purpose of a non-conforming use when you're trying to eliminate that use in future years.
Mr. Fink, if I may...
But it's not a non-conforming use, though, is it?
Currently, it's not.
It's an illegal use.
Correct.
That's right.
And it's fine to be illegal as long as the kids don't take the business over.
Well, as we discussed during the work session, I think our major concern is that if we're looking at these uses truly as illegal, is it good policy from a land use perspective to continue to allow it to perpetuate? And as I expressed during the work session, from a planning and zoning perspective, we did not think that was good policy.
But you're okay if that 20-year-old, if the business has been open for 20 years, he was 20 when he opened it, he's 40, you're okay with it staying open another 20 years, another 25 years, another 30 years, as long as his kids can't take the business over. It just seems like the policy is, it's okay that he continues to operate, but, you know, his kids can't take the business over. That's where we have a problem, which doesn't quite make sense. If you're okay with the illegal business continuing, why is it a problem if the child takes over? Doesn't sound like we have an answer for that. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Right.
I guess my concern is that, one, I guess the way it's being positioned is that the business isn't allowed to continue in operation. And that's not, I would say from my perspective, it's not 100% accurate, because technically that business could continue to exist just in a legal location.
That's correct.
And I guess the question is for the council to make, as I see it, is if somebody has gotten away with this in an illegal use for 20 years, should we continue to let them get away with it in perpetuity? And that, sort of flies in the face of every other business owner that played by the rules, and when the business grew outside of the regulations that limited them to one employee in their house, or that they had a business that wasn't supposed to be in their house, they figured out a way to go rent a piece of property and have it in a legal location. So we're saying to those people who worked by the book and played by the rules, sorry, you played by the rules, somebody else didn't, but they didn't get caught, so now it's okay. Is that sort of where we're at?
That's one way of looking at it, yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Grasso?
Yeah. I wouldn't exactly kind of put all that the way that it was just put, because we're just automatically assuming that a business is going to be successful. Sometimes people just get by and make ends meet. And in the case of Mr. Wilbur's situation, he's got a couple employees, he's paying his bills, and he just doesn't have the capital money to move into another location. And in that case, I remember many of us, Republicans at that, campaigned on a point that we were going to create jobs in Anne Arundel County. At least that was our pitch. And I'm just lost in the world of why we would do anything to make it tough for a business to start. And we use this word illegal. It's only illegal because this business is not on the special exceptions list. But we campaigned for jobs. And you got to start jobs from somewhere. They either come from people that have financial footing, that they go into a commercial setting, but unfortunately not everybody has that ability, and I've already told you folks my chicken story of John Grasso and Chesapeake Meats. I didn't have the financial means, so I started Chesapeake's Meats in my kitchen. And we've also talked about how Apple started in someone's garage, and we talked about Under Armour, who started in someone's basement. We're all in the assumption that we have financial abilities to do that. And just because someone opens a business up and they're successful for running for 20 years, they are successful at paying their current bills. That doesn't mean they're successful at a capital expansion of going somewhere else to come up with the money. We shouldn't penalize people that want to create jobs and businesses, or someone who has maintained a job or a business. And this is something that a Republican I would believe that would automatically stand behind us all the way, because this is what we're about. Getting government out of the people's business, creating jobs. That's what Republicans stand for. And I'll let it go at that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to...
Mr. Smith?
So why not, to Councilman Grasso's credit, why not try to get it as a special exception? What's the challenge with that, or is it something that really is out of character with that particular zoning classification? I don't know. I'm just curious if that was even considered, versus this route, and what was the rationale by going this path versus the other one?
Well, originally, Mr. Smith, what it was is that our government had the threshold of proven 30 years. If someone actually got, like a Mr. Wilbur's situation, they went to the man and said, listen, we may be able to give you a special exception, but you got to prove that you've been there for 30 years. Now, I don't know what I did last week, more or less 30 years ago, but that's what this government wants this man to prove, is a 30-year proof that he's been in business. And then even after he proves that he's been there for 30 years, which he can't because he's only been there for 26 years, he's not one of the special exceptions on this list. So he loses any way around. Now, the prior council, and Mr. Swain could probably help me out on this, we put in a bill for 10 years, okay? But the problem was the first bill we passed, rebuttable, help me out here, Mr. Swain.
Gregory Swain from the Office of Law. The first bill was a change from the 30-year rebuttable presumption to a 10-year rebuttable presumption to prove a non-conforming use. This bill is different than that, because even with under the current non-conforming use law, if you can show you've been there for 30 years, there is a rebuttable presumption that you are considered a non-conforming use. But it's rebuttable, which means if the county can show through other evidence that you haven't been there since 1952, you would still not get your non-conforming use. So what this bill does is it looks at it from a different perspective, and it simply says if you've been there for 20 years, it's been continuous under the same owner, then the county cannot prosecute a zoning violation against you. And at that point, you will have to register your property as what they call a 20-year registered use. It's different than a non-conforming use because it has less protections than a non-conforming use has. And again, it's something that's unique to the owner, so it would allow the current owner to continue with their business. And one of the things we looked at with regard to that time frame was the practice of the Board of Appeals, and in Mr. Wilbur's case is a good example. They denied him the non-conforming use, but they said you can stay in business for 3 more years. So we'll put a stay on the enforcement of that. So this is kind of an extension of that, to say to him, you can continue with your business, but that's you can't sell it, you can't pass it on, and
For 3 years.
No, under this bill.
Yeah,
it would
that's
be
what I'm
as
saying,
long
but
as
the
you want.
Board
Under
of Appeals was 3 years
the Board of
extension.
Appeals was 3 years.
And then at the end of it, he shuts his doors
He would
down.
have
So,
to shut down or be in violation.
so when we brought in the 10-year bill that we all passed, it has a rebuttable presumption showing that if the county can prove anything beyond that 10 years, then it wouldn't matter.
Right.
So what this bill is doing is not allowing the county to prove any evidence after 20 years. If the man can prove he's been there for 20 years, he gets to continue being there for 20 years, or continue his business. Okay?
Thank you, Mr.
So the
Chairman.
Board of Appeals gave him a 3-year stay, in other words, on enforcement, so they allowed him to continue to operate the business in the location for an additional 3. So he had 3 years to figure out a plan, basically, to either figure out a way to move to another location or to sell the business, the operation of the business, the rights to the business, or whatever.
He had 3 years before he
Figure
would be
out.
considered illegal. So he could, in that 3-year period, he could do any of those things.
Got it. Mr. Prisky?
As a former member of the Board of Appeals, I can recall, I don't know if it was this case or several others, trying to prove whether you've been there for 20 years. Certainly, that's a challenge, trying to find somebody who is still around, or your paperwork or other things. My question, though, is of enforcement. We're talking about, we're aware of 3. Is there more? How aggressively do we find these things? Do people file a complaint? Do we just happen to go through, when we're going through comprehensive rezoning? Just for the public's view and everyone's view here, how would we know that these, would kind of fit? If you could explain that, Larry, that'd be helpful.
Councilman Prusky, the reality of the situation is that we would only respond on a complaint basis.
Okay. And then the other question I had was in regards to appeals themselves, and this is actually to Mr. Swain or Ms. Rhodes. Do you see any people coming back, that had an issue before? I know we mentioned 3 properties, but I'm just curious on further appeals, that this raising other issues. I mean, I don't know how that would fit if we were to pass this bill. Would there be any impact about other people coming forward and arguing one way or another?
Well, with regard to Mr. Wilbur, for instance, I believe he has appealed. So the way that land use laws are a little different than many laws, because they will, even if his case is appealed and this law passes, this will apply to his situation. If you've already had an enforcement action against you and it's completed, and you're not in litigation, not under appeal, this would not apply.
Thank you.
In the case of Mr. Wilbur, he has an attorney that he's hired to represent him?
I am not aware. I spoke to Mr. Wilbur about pursuing an appeal. That was before the last bill, so I'm not sure what he's done since then. I don't know.
His funds are very limited. This is a senior citizen. He's like 73 years old. He's done this most of his life.
He's
And-
appealed to circuit court.
Mr. Pruger?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Isn't it also true, I'm going back to the discussion of illegality, isn't it also true that there could be a situation where he could have been legal for 18 of the 20 years and then been illegal, or been quote-unquote illegal? That's not in this situation?
Well, in his situation, when he commenced the use, it was...
Well, I'm not talking about Mr. Wilbur particularly. I'm just asking the question generally, this 20-year, this bill that we're talking about now.
So I'm not sure I understand the question.
Isn't it, well, I'm going back to the hypothetical, I guess, that the chairman was discussing, where he was saying if somebody's been illegal for this number of years, and then now there's a problem with it, but it's been illegal all this time and he's quote unquote gotten away. But I was asking the question, isn't it true that, or is it true that a period of those years he could have been in compliance, but the law changed?
That's possible, but it's not what happened in his situation.
Okay.
And if that happened, if you commenced the use when it was legal and then the law changed, then you could show non-conforming. You wouldn't need to prove anything.
Other than that, okay, thank you.
So you wouldn't need to prove the 20 years or anything like that?
No, like suppose if the zoning changed in a comp zoning and you were existing, you wouldn't need to prove 20, 10, or 30 years. You just have to show your use was
You
legal
were
when it was
legal at the
commenced.
time when it was commenced.
That's
And
correct.
then you'd be a
You'd have to
non-conforming
file
use.
like a non-conforming use letter every year with the county, just stating, hey, I'm still here
That's
doing
correct.
this business in this form in this district.
That's correct.
Right.
Any additional discussion? Mr. Fink?
On that scenario with the non-conforming use, they're allowed to sell that business, though, right?
Yes.
Yes,
they are.
And it doesn't have to be their son, it can be anybody.
That's
And they
correct.
can continue to operate that business as a non-conforming use.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Because as long as they don't discontinue the use for more than a year, correct? Because that's what I ran into in my district during comp zoning with some of the restaurants.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. So as long as the property is maintained as a restaurant, even though it might not have, got it, okay. Any additional questions from the council? Okay, seeing none, thank you all very much. All right. This time we'll have the public hearing on Bill, sorry, I'm lost in my shuffle here, 715, thank you, 715. There's no one signed up for 715. If you'd like to speak on behalf of this bill, please come forward at this time.
Julie Johnson, P.O. Box 6634, Annapolis, Maryland. I don't have a whole lot to say about this bill, except that I have profound concerns. I live in a neighborhood where I have a bar that has a 2 a.m. closing time. I have a neighbor who's been one of the best welders in Anne Arundel County for decades, except he just passed away about a year and a half ago. And then on down the street, there are 5-acre plots. It was called Garden Farms. And we had an upholsterer, an electrician, a roofer, a plumber, and and on these 5-acre plots, the people had their homes, they had their businesses, they had their gardens, and they were really important parts of the community. And their businesses had the business had value because it had a convenient location. The customers knew where they were located. And I know that in some commercial sales, they call it, there is a jargon term for the conveyance of, I don't remember what the jargon word is, but it's, hey, you've been here, you've got a group of customers, they know you, they rely upon you, you're an important contributing part of the community, and that's worth thousands and thousands of dollars in the purchase of the land and the structures, because it's an intangible, but it's important. And when I hear these things, oh, we enforce it based on complaints. You know, this is such an erratic and, irrational thing. When somebody wants the land that belongs to another person, oh, you file some complaints. When someone has a complaint with someone, like my neighbor who wants my land, oh, sure, bring in truckloads of junk and dump it, and then call them and tell them I've got junk on my land. And then the county doesn't go after him. They come after me. And so I think that there is a problem here, and I sure wish that you could figure out a way to protect a man who's 73 and he wants to pass his business to his son.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Any additional comments on 715? Seeing no movement in the audience, the public hearing on 715 is now closed. Madam Secretary, we do have one amendment. Please read the title of amendment number 1.
This amendment removes the exception to termination of a 20-year registered use for transfer of the property to a child of the owner of the property.
Thank you. Do you have a motion to adopt?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second. Second. Mr. Marzer, this is your amendment. I know you addressed it earlier, but just for the record.
Somebody will second.
Bernie Marzik from the County Executive's Office. We have offered the amendment before you to eliminate the ability for a business owner to pass this ability along, pass the business along to a child, with the idea of eliminating the non-conforming use once the business owner is deceased.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments from the council? Mr. Fink? Okay. Thank you. Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 1.
Mr. Trumbauer?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Grasso?
Nay.
Mr. Fink?
Nay.
Mr. Pruski?
Aye.
Mr. Perutka?
Nay.
Mr. Walker?
Nay.
3 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative. Amendment number 1 is defeated.
Thank you. Bill number 715, as amended, will be heard on March.
It failed. The amendment failed.
Oh, I'm
So
sorry.
you're gonna- you got
It
to
did,
vote
so
on
go
the
right to
bill.
vote. Fair enough. I'm reading off my script, which is not what happened. Thank you for pointing that out. Since that failed, we will go to the final roll call on the vote. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill 715.
An ordinance concerning zoning, nonconforming uses, limitations, 20-year registered use.
Any additional discussion? I would just add a comment to say that a couple of weeks ago, we dealt with a bill related to affordable housing. And part of the argument that was put forward at that time was that we have zoning codes in place for a reason, and we should stick to those zoning codes. They're established there for a purpose. And so with that, I will be voting against this bill.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Prisky.
I talked to Mr. Grasso earlier about this. I was going to support the bill with the amendment, but since the amendment failed, I can't. I clearly thought the amendment was a compromise, but I also will be voting no. I would have voted yes if the amendment would have passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? Thank you. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Trumbauer?
No.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Grasso?
Aye.
Mr. Fink?
Aye.
Mr. Pruski?
No.
Mr. Perutka?
Aye.
Mr. Walker?
No.
4 in the affirmative, 3 in the negative. Bill 715 is passed.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill 815.
An ordinance concerning zoning, breweries, craft breweries, and farm breweries.
Thank you. This is my bill, my Mr. Trumbauer's, and actually the whole council has, I believe at this point, co-sponsored the bill. We covered it in work session this last week, and we do have some folks signed up to speak tonight. I think what the bill does is pretty straightforward, and with that, I'll ask for comments from the administration.
Sure. Bernie Marzik from the County Executive's Office. The County Executive supports this bill as was discussed in the previous work session. This bill will add breweries, craft breweries, and farm breweries as acceptable uses in the county zoning code. We're one of the few counties in the region that does not allow farm breweries, and we think this will put us on similar footing with surrounding counties, and we will support this bill. We have staff from Planning and Zoning as well as Office of Law to answer any questions the council may have.
Thank you. Any question from the council? Mr. Trumbauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Tom, we've gotten some, or I've at least gotten some contacts about one particular provision of this bill about the farm brewery part, and I suspect we'll hear a little bit about that during the public comment system or process. But you obviously have seen that other counties have similar farm brewery provisions in their code.
That's correct.
One of the things that's been brought to my, one of the fears that's been brought to my attention is that there will be large-scale festival-type things on the scale of the Renaissance Festival in farms in South County. I mean, is that something that you could envision this legislation enabling?
Well, quite frankly, we haven't done that kind of analysis of the.
Right.
But my understanding of the bill is that it comports with state law.
Right.
So I think there would be safeguards. If you're going to associate an event like the Renaissance Festival, that of course is a special exception use in Anne Arundel County. So I don't know that apples to oranges.
Okay.
I think that doesn't compare exactly.
Okay. And sure, Ms. Tate.
If I could just elaborate a little bit. Under the state license for the farm brewery, they have to get a promotional event license in order to do that from the controller's office. They're limited.
I'm sorry, from the comptroller's office? Is it from the state
comptroller's
Okay.
office, yes. Sorry, not controller.
Just wanted to make sure.
Comptroller, which they issue the manufacturer licenses for the breweries. And there's a limit on the number of licenses for those types of promotional events they can have, and it's 12, usually per year. So, and those are usually issued for the day, I believe. So I don't know whether we're talking about a proliferation of a 4-month beer festival on someone's farm. I don't think the controller's license allows for that, if that is what the concern is.
Yeah, and I don't think it was the sponsor's intent to allow that, because
No, it's not, but
when I
they are,
talked to him about the bill,
they
that
are
didn't come
permitted
up.
to have a promotional event for the farm brewery. Some jurisdictions limit how many people can be in an event at the brewery at a time. We don't have that. I will say I think the requirements in the state license for the farm brewery have a great deal more in them than what is currently imposed on our other farm-based alcohol business, which is the farm wineries.
And nothing would preclude this council if, in fact, some unintended consequence happened. I mean, we could come back and put further restrictions on to eliminate that.
Sure, we can always go stricter, we just can't go looser.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And
Thank you, Ms. Thompson.
Ms. Tate, are you familiar with the vineyards? Are there any restrictions on the amount of events they can have in a year?
Not in our code, there are not, and I don't know of any in the state licensing provisions for wineries as to how many events they can have on their properties and how many people they can have on their property when they do it.
I will just say, for the benefit of the council, I have 2 vineyards in my district. I know they have multiple events a year at those properties. I haven't received in my office any complaints about the operations, about the size of the events, about the traffic, or any of the concerns that I think have been expressed in some of the emails that we've received. Any additional questions from the council? Seeing none. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll move into the public testimony on Bill number 815. We do have a couple of individuals signed up to speak. I'll read those off. They can come up. Actually, we have 5 individuals signed up to speak. Mike Lofton, Pat Lynch, Joe Friend, Liz Murphy, and Chuck Soja. You all could come forward at this time. Take a seat here at the table. And Mr. Lofton, when you're ready, you can get us started.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Mike Lofton. Live on Polling House Road in Harwood. I'm a 40-year resident of South County. I'm not a farmer, but I live on a farm, Browsley Hall Farm, that's been an active farm in Anne Arundel County since colonial times. And I also have a background in economic development. My working career is in job creation, job generation, business recruitment, and development. I think our farm industries need every possible tool they can to survive and to prosper. And I think the key to success in South County, keeping South County rural, which is sort of the watchword, is prosperous agriculture. And I think introducing breweries to farms is a fine idea. There are problems with this bill, however, and I think it's unfortunate that Planning and Zoning has not really looked into the question of the festivals, and that I would have to say that testimony was really inadequate. And Ms. Tate, the licensing that the state allows, those are not 1 day, they're up to 3 day. So up to 3 days at a time, you can get 12, so you could do every summer weekend, June, July, and August, from 10 in the morning to 10 at night. And I'm sure nobody intends to do that, and nobody's done it yet. But the fact is that if you enact that in the code, they can, and you really, once they start the process, it'll be very difficult to rein it in. So I'm not sure that, ready, fire, aim is the way to go on this. I would urge you to be very cautious about this. It's a real character change that you're opening up. The scale of these operations, the bottling particularly, and I think this is fine, but you need to understand that elsewhere in the code, bottling, whether you're bottling Pepsi, Coke, or even water, is a W2, W3 use. It's an industrial use. You're authorizing an industrial use in the RA zone, the residential agriculture zone. You're authorizing industrial use. And you're doing it as a conditional. And I'm not against that, but it ought to be a special exception use. It ought to be a case where there's public participation through a hearing, where the administrative hearing officer has a chance to look at the particular circumstances of the applicant and create conditions that allow them to be prosperous and don't ruin the quality of life for others in the vicinity. And this needs to be a special exception use. And I really urge you to rein in these. We could have beer festivals, and I'll probably go to many of them, every summer weekend, June, July, and August, on every 10-acre RA zone piece of property in South County. That's not what I don't think that's your intention, but if that's the way you write the rule book, then the players can play under those rules. And I would urge you not to pass this bill. I would urge you to spend a little more time with your constituents. There are a lot of people that want to be here tonight because of the weather or not. I don't think you're going to hear from the true voice of those folks that live in the RA zone. So I'd urge you to hold this bill and work with us. Thank you.
Ms. Lynch?
I'm Pat Lynch. I live at 1648 Homewood Road, Annapolis, Maryland. I support Mike Lofton's position on this bill, and that is it should not be a conditional use. It should be a special exception only. I grew up on Long Island. All those potato farms are now wineries. Beer is different from wine. There's a requirement for a 100-foot setback. There's a 10,000 minimum acreage. 100 feet is not a whole lot. And when I drive out on Long Island, when I still call it home, when I go home in the summertime, you have busloads of people coming in, all kinds of parties, festivals, weddings, etc., that take place on these properties. You have people who leave the wineries, and quite frankly, some of them are pretty well crocked. You have accidents out there due to the consumption of alcohol. This, to me, is a very serious change of character to South County. There is a maximum of 15,000 barrels a year. That could produce 5 million bottles of wine of beer per location, per site. The number of festivals, to me, is outrageous. 3 days, 10 in the morning till 10 at night. I ask you to hold this bill and give it some more thought.
Thank you, Ms. Lynch. Ms. Murphy.
Hi. My name is Liz Murphy. I live at 1901 West Street in Annapolis. First of all, I really want to thank everybody for hearing this today. I'm speaking more from a general position that supports this piece of legislation. Currently, according to the Brewers Association, craft beer is a $14.3 billion industry. And even though Maryland is on the smaller end of that scale, ranked 37th per capita in terms of number of craft breweries that we have, we are 21st in terms of the economic impact. I think there's a really great opportunity here to not only bring a burgeoning industry to this county, it also is a job creator. But if we want to talk more on the fluffy side of things, what takes beer from being something that is just something that, quite frankly, is delicious, and I think a lot of people can agree with that, is that it really is an opportunity for local craftsmen to share stories that have to do with where they are from and where they are going. For example, Union Brewing in Baltimore, they recently produced a beer called Anthem that was brewed in honor of the 200th anniversary of the writing of the Star-Spangled Banner. Full Tilt, also out of Baltimore, they just released this week a beer called the Bay IPA, which was brewed in conjunction with the Chesapeake Bay Trust in order to donate proceeds from the sales of those beers back to the community. Maryland beer has a long-standing history of being part of the community, not a force that works against it. This is especially shown with the Brewers Association of Maryland, which is led by Flying Dog Brewery, who also has worked with Annapolis-based Oyster Recovery Partnership in order to support bay restoration. Anytime you purchase a bottle of their oyster stout, it helps them plant 10 oysters in the bay. Again, I think this is a great opportunity to support jobs, a burgeoning industry, and also provide craftsmen locally to give back to their communities. Thank you.
Ms. Murphy, you heard some of the concerns with regards to the farm breweries. Are you familiar with any farm breweries here in the state?
Yes, I am. There is Milk House at Still Point Farm, which is located out in Frederick County, and I completely understand those concerns. But in terms of the festivals that I've seen for beer, they tend to be done at the Brewers Association of Maryland level, and they are all done in parks. They are not usually done on the grounds of those particular facilities. Do they have events one-off here and there? Absolutely. But if we're talking about the days-long festivals, those are the Maryland beer festivals that take place in Frederick, Maryland, and Carroll Park. But the one that I've been to, it's small, it's idyllic, quite frankly. I did not want to come back. It was so quiet and peaceful. And all of the events they have to do there are hop harvesting, where people can bring their families. In fact, I found that most farm breweries tend to be very family-oriented, as opposed to ones that you may find in an industrial area that are geared more towards adults.
Thank you. Mr. Friend.
Thank you. If it may please the council, I've been a lifelong member of Anne Arundel.
Name and address. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Joseph Friend. My address is 1612 Earlham Avenue. And I've been a lifelong member of Anne Arundel County with the exception of going away for school for a few years. I'm really excited about the economic impacts that this bill may have on the community. But I wanted to bring to this council's attention the real estate component here. Simply looking at some of the vacant space, even around, let's say, the airport, there's roughly about 2 million square feet of vacant space that this sort of use could be utilized in, according to my recent CoStar updates. Looking around, it seems as though you could have businesses operating as small as maybe 5,400 square feet, and we've heard from groups interested in opening up operations as large as 20 and 30,000 square feet. I just wanted to bring my point of view as a commercial industrial real estate agent as to the positive impacts it could have on small corridors that are looking for some form of kickstart or jumpstart in order to start their economic revival in those communities. Thank you.
Do you feel like this will be a plus in the commercial and industrial zone districts?
Correct. Thank you.
Mr. Soja.
Hi, Chuck Soja, 701 Laurel Lane. I'm the owner of Lures Bar and Grill in Crownsville, so I've been around craft beer for a while. When we started Lures about 7 years ago, craft beer wasn't as popular as it was today, and you couldn't really go out and get a good beer just anywhere. And now it's quite different. Most of your neighborhood restaurants or bars that you go to, you're going to find a great selection of craft beer. And not only just a good craft beer, you're going to find a Maryland brewed beer. And I hope to be one of the first or a future brewery owner here in Anne Arundel County. You know, Marylanders, I think we have a lot of pride in our state. And people want to support the little guy. And brewing beer is not just a process. I view it more almost as an art, a craft. Takes a lot of skill, knowledge, and passion. And, you know, it's something that the community, I think, would be very, very proud to have a beer that was brewed within 10, 15, 20 miles of where they're drinking it, brewed by locals, people they know, for the locals. Not to mention the, you know, economic impact that a brewery is going to provide jobs. It will provide revenue and taxes. So like I said, I hope to be one of the first breweries in the county.
And your intent is to open something commercial, industrial zone area?
Yeah, you know, it takes takes a little bit of a large square footage to open a brewery. You know, we want to have a restaurant there too, light food, but we also want our beer to be distributed around local bars. So, you know, not necessarily the heavy industrial, but wherever I can find a good spot.
Thank you. Mr. Chris?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may, and I'm asking you as a restaurant business owner, what's the kind of capital that would take for a brewery? I mean, I've talked to some people, but I'm just curious about that, because also we're making an assumption that there's going to be a brewery everywhere. And I know there's a lot of, you know, funds or other things that go, but just as a business owner, I'm curious if you would comment on that.
You know, a brew house itself, a 15-barrel brew house itself will cost about $400,000. And that doesn't include build out, you know, a tasting room. I've got budgeted probably over $800,000. So it's not something that I don't think is going to be everywhere. Just it's not feasible. It's a lot of money startup.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prisky. Any additional questions from the council? Seeing none, thank you all very much. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on Bill 815? Good evening, sir.
My name is Richard Price. I live at 916 Upper Pendle Road, Lothian. I agree with Mr. Lofton on the amount of days, and one thing that wasn't spoken about is there's an additional 3-day festivity called a multi-brewery event that can also happen. So that's 13 3-day advent events that can go on. Also, the gentleman that talked about the startup fee, the farm brewing is different from most other brewing in that they can contract with a brewer to produce their product. They do not have to have the brewery equipment on site by the state law. So you could have produce your hops, take the hops, the 25% that the county requires, send that off to a brewer, have them apply your label, and you can sell it as your farm brewery. So the 400,000 startup is not really appropriate for all things. In reading them, and I support this, I think it's a great idea that we're bringing the breweries in it. The bill, as it's written, misses the Class 6, which is the pub breweries. It's not even mentioned in here. It's a Class 6 by the state. I don't know if that was an intentional leave out or not. But when you talk about craft brewery, to take it to the state does not call it a craft brewery when they describe it. They call it microbrewery. So you might want to change that in the bill. You also say that a Class 5 license is required for that, manufacturer's license. A microbrewery is a Class 7, not a Class 5. You set a lower limit for a Class 5 of having to produce more than 22,500 barrels. The state does not have that limitation. And on the back part where you describe the farm brewery, you say other natural ingredients, and the state defines that as fruit. So they say in the state law, it comes out as grain, hops, or fruit is produced instead of other natural ingredients, just to take some of the, make it a little clearer for the people that are trying to do this, because I'd like to see things like this happen. Being from South County, another concern that I have is the protection of the scenic and historic roads, and if we could put something in there to do that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson?
Julie Johnston, P.O. Box 6634, Annapolis, Maryland. I was not going to testify about this bill, but the testimony reminded me a lot of a program that was broadcast from Vail, Colorado, where they were talking about the issues with the introduction of marijuana for recreational and medicinal use, and the incredible amount of productivity and how much revenue was raised, and the contrary issues and problems. And I heard parallel comments made with respect to this bill. I believe that it is really important to protect the rights of the people who live in South County, to keep South County rural. And I agree with Mr. Lofton that I think some of this should be put on hold
while you have an opportunity to hear from the residents, who endure these festivals. Our Boy Scout troop, made a lot of money through the Smith family with the Renaissance Festival, and I can tell you a lot of wonderful things about them. But I also know there were a few people who left in a state that worried me. They were nice people, and but again, I grew up in places where I went to college in the birthplace of the Yankee Saloon League. There wasn't any drinking, so these things are a little alien and foreign to me, even though I've been here a while. I do have, profound concerns about the traffic on the narrow roads in South County, about whether, the neighbors really want to have this kind of a business. In my prior testimony, I told you that my neighbors, who operate these various and sundry trades, roofers, plumbers, electricians, are providing services that the community wants and needs, and that they were a valuable part of our community, even though it's, in terms of zoning, it doesn't meet R2.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Thank you, Justin. Anyone else wishing to speak on 815?
Oh, just one other thing about the weather. Since the weather was, I'm serious, I'm hobbling more than usual. It's sometimes hard to get out the cold.
Good evening. I'm Pat Fridley. I live 766 Maga Vista Road, Arnold. I've been in the craft community for just over 6 years now. Started out at a premier brewery in Milton, Delaware. You guys probably heard of it, Dogfish. I need to address the fact that we keep hearkening on these festivals and the 12 weeks that they're allowed to do it. That is not why they open up breweries at all. It's all about the pride. I want to hearken back to Chuck's sentiments that there's a lot of community and pride and camaraderie within the craft community. I mean, Dogfish, other than the racetrack in Dover, is the #1 tourist attraction in Delaware. So that's what they hope to be. They want to bring people in. They want to educate them about the craft industry. If you get a chance, just go out there and visit these breweries and see what they're all about. It is about community. When I was at Dogfish, we did maybe 4 or 5 events a year, and they were all partnered with a charitable cause that benefited back to the community and providing money and funds and resources for the community, whether it's Habitat for Humanity or an arboretum or what have you. So I think it's very beneficial to bring it in. There's 34 production breweries, I believe, last time I checked, in the state of Maryland, and not one of them is in Anne Arundel County. I think it's time we change that and allow this to go through.
Thank you, sir. Any additional testimony on 815? Seeing none, public hearing on Bill 815 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill 815.
An ordinance concerning zoning, breweries, craft breweries, and farm breweries.
Thank you. Is there any discussion amongst the council?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Trumbauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, considering, I think everybody likes this bill. There's some parts about the farm brewery. I don't know if you have any interest in addressing those now, or if you would, I'm going to do a little bit more work on this and look at some of the things that were brought to my attention. If you would be interested in working with me on a follow-up or something, then that might be another way. But I do appreciate the folks that came out today, and the one little sticky wicket is the farm brewery provision, and I want to make sure we get it right. So if we have to keep working on this, I'm certainly willing to do that. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I agree. I'm struck by the fact, I just want to make the comment, I'm struck by the fact that everybody tonight, I believe, is saying this bill is a good idea. So, but there's some worry as to some of the provisions. So I guess I'm of the mind that if these concerns could be brought together and resolved, and I'd be happy to work with that as well.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Mr. Trumbauer, is your intention to introduce a follow-up? Is that what I understood you to
I don't have any amendments, and you're the lead sponsor. If you wanted to go back and look at amendments, I'd support that. But if you want to vote the bill, then I'm just looking to see if you're sympathetic to what you heard and be willing to to work a follow-up to address those concerns.
I'd be certainly willing to look at a follow-up to address the concerns. I have no issue with that at all.
Okay.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll of Bill 815.
Mr. Trumbauer?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Mr. Chairman, real quick, I don't drink, so I've never.
Nope.
No, I'm not abstaining, but I don't drink alcohol, and I think I did have a little wine back in 2000. So one of the things I mentioned at the work session, I think is important. So if we want to focus on, I do drink and consume a lot of milk, and I see the Boy Scouts over here. So if we want to work on a farm bill for more cows, I'm all about that as well. But I will vote in favor of the bill. So aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, how
Wait,
old
wait,
were you in
wait a minute.
2000, Pete?
So you're saying aye?
Aye.
Mr. Grasso?
Aye.
Mr. Fink?
How old were you in 2000, Pete? Because we're the same age. I graduated high school in 99.
It's coming out.
Aye.
Mr. Pruski?
Aye.
Mr. Perutka? Mr. Walker?
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Bill 815 is passed.
Thank you. Is there any other business to be brought before the county council? Seeing none, may I have a motion to second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The county council is adjourned until March 2nd, 2015.